Welcome to our Living Her Legacy Honoree interview, which I consider words of wisdom. The Living Her Legacy nonprofit is recognizing women's accomplishments to inspire girls' futures. We are blessed to be able to visit with our honorees about their life journeys and share them with you. Today, I had the pleasure of visiting with Denny Moyer. Denny Moyer is a founding member and current CEO of the Ensight Skills Center for Low Vision Rehabilitation. Denny, thank you for joining me today to share your life journey and legacy with our guests.
Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. So I have some questions for you, and so I'll begin with our first question. Please share a brief summary of your upbringing, your background, and what you do today.
Well, a brief summary of my background. I was born and raised in the Chicagoland area. I'm a South Sider, and I come from a rather large Italian family. Of course, most of them have either moved away or are, have passed away. But I still have some family left back in Chicago. I moved to Colorado in 1995. And a little bit of background on my family. I have a brother and a sister, my sister Shar, my brother Steve, and who both live in the South now. And it's fun to go and visit them. My dad passed away when I was very young, and so my mom had to work full time, leaving us kids to kind of have to take care of the house and those things. But I think the end result of that was growing up, learning responsibility, and understanding what it meant to have family. My uncles and my cousins and everybody was around us all the time. And as I said, big Italian family, so they were around a lot anyway. But everybody pitched in. It was a community. And I learned a lot from that about who I am. I think that has really helped me when it comes to the business that I run now, in understanding that it's not as important what I know as the people who surround me. So if I don't have a skill or it's not my specialty, there are people around who can help. So I think that's one of the major things I learned growing up the way I did, was that there are people around to support you. That's been a major issue for me. As I started losing my vision as a young person, I was 19 when I was diagnosed with Stargardt's disease, which is a juvenile onset type of macular degeneration. And of course, there was the fear. This was a lot of years ago, and we didn't have home computers at that time. So I didn't have a way of actually looking up, on a daily basis, going to my computer to see what my symptoms meant, or even what the doctors were saying to me, what that meant. But the support from the family did help to ease some of that fear. But it's because I lost my vision at a young age that I decided to go to school to become an occupational therapy assistant. And I guess I thought that if I worked in a field where other people had disabilities or had injuries, and I worked in a rehab setting, that I would feel more comfortable. And so it was really, it was more about me than the people at that time that I was helping. It wasn't until I moved to Colorado in 95 that I actually learned about occupational therapy practitioners working in the low vision field. And I took a class in Denver. It was a one-day course. And I knew that was my purpose in life, that's what I was supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. So I, of course, after a few years, I was able to co-found an agency, the Ensight Skills Center, and provide low vision services throughout the state of Colorado, which is what we do now. So that's kind of the background on how that came to be. That's my backstory.
That's very exciting. Thank you so much for sharing. And I agree with you. Family is extremely important for support. And we don't always realize that as
No.
we're growing up. But when we get older and look back on our life, I think it comes to life more in
It certainly is.
how we got to where we are today. Yeah, I agree with you. So our second question is, what do you see as the primary personality traits that allow a woman to achieve her goals and live her passion?
I had to think about this a bit, but I really think that you have to be willing to take a chance. That just because people say no to you doesn't mean that it can't happen or that you can't be successful in what your passion is. I've always believed that the only time that you fail is if you don't try something. That if I do something and I make a mistake, or if I feel that somebody is maybe not against me, but is having problems with what I think I want to do, or they throw up obstacles for me, that those are learning experiences for me. At first, I felt very attacked when people would ask me these in-depth questions about, well, why do you need money for this? Or why do you want to go into this field? Or, but then I learned that those were the things, those were the questions, those were the opportunity for me to learn, because I needed to be able to answer that. Why do I want to do this? Or what is the purpose for this? And so those were the people who actually helped me to succeed. So I think that if it's something you're passionate about, you don't take no for an answer, and you have to be willing to take those chances. You have to be persistent in what you love.
I agree wholeheartedly. I've experienced some of that as I've worked through this process to create our nonprofit. And we just found out late yesterday afternoon that we've been approved by the IRS.
Yay!
So
congratulations.
Yes. Well, thank you. So it's a very exciting moment in our history as we go forward with our Living Her Legacy nonprofit. So our next question is, what motivates you?
The people that I serve. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning. I have been so blessed to be able to provide these services. And again, the people that have been around me and that support me, there's so many blessings in what I do. And I don't even really work with people one-on-one anymore. I'm mostly administrative. I go out into the communities and talk about what we do and write the checks, sign the checks, do those kinds of things, write grants. Even though I have a team that works with me, I have to make sure that things are running well and that the people that we serve are getting what they need. And so one of the things that, when you talk about motivation for me, is being in the community, talking to people and seeing what their needs are, because it's not about me, even though I'm a consumer. I have vision loss, and I know what I specifically need, but I need to be sure that we are providing the people that we serve with the most up-to-date types of therapy, the most up-to-date tools, the most up-to-date techniques. Assistive technology is so huge, and so many of the people that we serve, because of their vision loss, they feel that they can't use computers anymore, or their cell phones. They have kind of, if you will, shrunk their worlds and are relying on other people. And so what motivates me is showing them that they can still participate in their own life, that they can still be independent. And that happens when I make sure that I've got the right people working for Ensight, and I make sure that everybody is continuing with their education and we are providing the best services that we possibly can. It it's an amazing feeling to know that I have some part in changing somebody's life. It is what gets me out of bed in the mornings.
I can understand that. That's wonderful. We'll move on to our next question. What sparked your interest to follow your current legacy?
Well, again, having lost my vision at a young age, and of course, I'm not a totally blind person. I'm a visually impaired person. I have low vision. So I still have a significant amount of remaining vision. And having gone to school then in the Chicago area for occupational therapy, when I was working in general rehab, a lot of the people that I was working with, as you know, Patty, with your nursing background, that a lot of people were coming in with broken hips, broken shoulders, broken wrists, and of course, stroke patients, and for other reasons they needed rehab. But in doing the medical history, I was starting to notice that a lot of the people that we were working with who had broken a hip or broken a shoulder had a secondary diagnosis, which would have been macular degeneration or glaucoma or cataracts that hadn't been surgically removed. And because of those diagnoses, they had missed a step or tripped over a rug or tripped over a pet, whatever the reason was. Well, my job was to treat them for the fracture, for the broken hip or the shoulder or whatever. But what I realized was that as we were working on that, we weren't addressing the issue of their vision. So if I sat in front of them and showed them exercises to improve their body strength so that they could use a walker or crutches or whatever, could they see what I was doing? Could they read the handouts that we gave them? How were people approaching them when they went into their room? So I'm realizing that this is a much bigger deal than just the fact that this person broke an arm. And how could we address that? And so this was a life care center in Longmont where I was working, and I went to the powers that be, my boss, and said, I would like to take these courses, and here's why. And they approved it. And that was when I first started learning about low vision and how to work with, people who were having incidents like this and who were making their world smaller. So that was when I went ahead and started my education in low vision. And it was because I was seeing the effects of that has brought me this far. I mean, it was like this tidal wave that just took me away. So starting those classes, knowing that I had the background to work with them, and I had the background, personal experience of having vision loss. So knowing what they were going through and how they lived every day, and bringing those two things together told me, wow, okay, here you go. And as soon as I got started with this, it just, like I said, it was a tidal wave. It just took me along with it. And God had a plan, an amazing plan.
Yes, I agree. God has a plan for all of us. We don't always know what it is until it shows up one day. And then we just need to listen. And
that's right.
And you are a blessing to all of these individuals that you have helped along the way. And thanks to those folks that were in the hospital that you were helping, for them to provide you this opportunity to see that there were other avenues that you could support them through their healing journey.
Yes, I agree. And thank you for saying that. And yes, I'm so grateful to those people. And I'll be honest with you, even though it's been over 20 years, I still see and talk to some of them.
Oh, that's nice. That's very nice. Yes. And it's nice for them as well to be remembered. Yeah. Everybody likes to be recognized. So that's wonderful right. that you still run into some of those folks. So thank you for that, sharing that. So our next question is, what obstacles have you faced in achieving your goals, and how did you overcome them?
Well, my biggest obstacle, I'm going to say, has been the vision loss and the lack of understanding, not necessarily on my part, but on others, of what it actually means and what people are still capable of. People think about disabilities, and for some reason, disability seems to go along with like cognitive deficits. They feel like there's more to it than just you're in a wheelchair or you're visually impaired or you're hearing impaired. They don't actually understand the person, and that the person can still have drive and still be intelligent. So I think that starting with wanting to go to college, my family, supportive as they could be, but felt that why would I go to college? What was I going to be able to do? Maybe I should just stay home and take care of the kids and be a good wife and those kinds of things. And didn't really support me in the beginning when it came to going back to school. How are you going to overcome because, if you can't drive yourself, or, if the books aren't in large print, which they weren't, how are you going to do this? Maybe you should just stay home where we can give you rides and, So that was an initial obstacle. And then later, after receiving education, it became, I had to prove myself to the hospitals where I worked, or I worked in brain injury for a number of years, which I absolutely adored. This was still in the Chicago area. And I always, even though when I hire somebody, they're always on, right, a probation for 3 months, but this was deeper. They wanted to see that there weren't going to be any major issues related to my vision. Nobody wants to, it's changing, but people are afraid of vision loss, and that maybe there's going to be a fall and they're going to get sued, or they're going to have to provide me with special equipment, or, things like that. And so I always had to prove myself. And that became an obstacle, but it also became a jumping off point for me, in that I know I can do these things. And so I'd have to go in and be very sure of myself that I can do this job. It's not about my vision. And so over the years I learned, and I went back to school and got a degree in healthcare administration so that I would be better at what I do. I don't have to prove myself anymore. And so I feel like that obstacle has gone away. But yeah, having lost my vision, first I had to get over myself and get self-confidence again, because it was tough in the beginning. You don't know where you're gonna land. As we were just talking about, you can look back, but you can't see forward. And so you don't know what's going to happen. But I had to gain confidence in myself. And I've been very fortunate then to now be surrounded by people who support me.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. So on the other side of the overcoming obstacles, what do you feel has been your greatest accomplishment in your endeavors?
Well, in my endeavors, in my life, I would say my daughters and my grandchildren, and my husband, Dan. But in my endeavors, my greatest accomplishment is that we just began in this July of 2020, our 20th year in service. So Ensight's been open for 19 years, just beginning our 20th. And we have served over 90,000 people.
Wow.
There isn't more, as far as I'm concerned, than that I am able to continue to serve people, that we have grown from the Ensight Center. From our beginning was in the basement of another nonprofit in Fort Collins, Elder House. And we were in the basement, it was dark, but it was free. It was for 2 years, myself and a friend of mine who's an occupational therapist who got started. We got our original funding from the Lions Club. And after 2 years and learning how to write grants, we were able to move to a little bit larger street level, if you will, facility where people could actually walk in the door and see us, to now having a center that's much larger, a staff of 19. We have another center, the Curtis Strong Center, which is in Greeley, Colorado, which helps us to serve all of Weld County and eastern Colorado. We have satellite offices in Longmont and Lafayette, working with the Eye Care Center of Northern Colorado. We have a satellite office in Lowry with the Colorado Retina Associates. And we have a satellite office in Littleton with and oh boy, they changed their name they were the Colorado Corneal Consultants, and they've changed that. And I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me, but they all support us by giving us free space where we can serve people in those general areas, because one of the biggest obstacles for people with vision loss is driving, transportation. And so one of our goals was to develop our programs so that we could make ourselves accessible to them. So we are spreading ourselves out. We have a program called our Ensight Onsite, and we travel all over the state of Colorado. We also go to Wyoming and occasionally Nebraska, but we go to Grand Junction, we go to Ray, Colorado, we go to Yuma, we try to cover the whole state. And we're fortunate that we partner with the area agencies on aging across the state to be able to serve people with vision loss so that they too can, again, be able to be independent. Everybody wants independence. Even though we all depend on each other for things, we never really think about that. A person that has normal sight never thinks about the fact that they depend on somebody to bring groceries into the grocery store and get them out on the shelves. And we're all dependent on something, on somebody. But when you have to start asking people for things like, can I have a ride to the doctor? Or, can you read the newspaper to me? It starts to feel different. And so it's an innate, obstacle for us, if you will. It's in our own heads that now we're dependent and we're less than we were before. We all want to be able to do those things, independently, if possible.
Oh, right. And I think, that we're in the midst of this COVID pandemic. I think that might raise a bit more awareness of how we are dependent on others, for everybody to be more aware of that concept in our life.
That's true.
And so it's good for us to take some time out to think about our life and who we depend on and give them thanks. I think that's really important. So thank you for that. So who were your role models growing up, and how did they impact your life?
Well, and I've actually written this down, and I've actually contacted these people because they've made such a difference in my life. When I look back, as we were just talking, there is a very clear path for me. My vision is 2020 when I look back at the people who came into my life and made a difference. Sometimes it gives me chills when I think about it, that these people had so much impact on who I became and how it all happened, starting with my mom, who was very supportive of me, who was one of the most compassionate people and loving and forgiving people I've ever known. I don't feel like I quite live up to her when it comes to those things, but watching how she was with people. First of all, she never met a stranger. I don't have that. I'm much more of an introvert, but she cared for everybody. She didn't judge people. And I feel like, oh, when I have one of those things coming over me, I think about my mom, and it's like, you know what? She loved everybody. God loves everybody. God loves this person, whether I like them or not. And so it really helps me, and she helped me with that. The first doctor that I saw regarding my vision, when it first started to change, Dr. Finnegan, um, he talked about persistent. So for 5 years, I was going for tests because they didn't really know what was going on, why I was having this very rapid vision loss. And he would offer to take me to these appointments downtown Chicago. He would call my mother. I was married at the time, and he would call my mom and say, you've got to get her to go. She's got to go for these tests. We've got to know what's going on. And I'd go to his office and I'd cry, and he'd hold me, put his arm around me and say, we're going to find out what's going on. He supported me in such a huge way, really made a big difference to me. There is a woman who, unfortunately, I have no idea what her name is. I have tried to find out. She belonged to the same church that I went to where I grew up. And we were at the church one day because our children were starting kindergarten. And we were sitting at the table. They were taking the kids in the other room to do some testing. And so she and I were talking, and I said, yeah, I want to go back to school. I don't know what I want to do with my life. And I told her about my vision loss and my fears. Why? I have no idea, but this is the way it happened. And she is the one who said, have you ever considered going into the medical field and working with other people who might need you? I had never thought of it before. She is the person who inspired me to start looking at college catalogs in those areas. I would love to be able to go to her and say thank you for what you did for me. I'm sure she has no idea who I am, wouldn't even remember the conversation. Mm-hmm. And then when I went back to school, one of my professors, Catherine Eberhardt, she was outstanding in her support, and we're still friends. She made sure that I talked with counselors there, I guess, and I told them about my vision loss. And actually, it was at that time that they gave me a person who went from class to class with me and took the notes and then blew them all up and helped me. But Cathy was constantly there for me. Always made sure that my tests were in large print, that I had extra time if I need. I mean, she was a cheerleader for me. It was really amazing, and I love her for that. Once I moved to Colorado, I met a woman named Aida Rader, and Aida did two things for me. One, she knew that I was seeking a new church. I had been born and raised, again, Italian Catholic. And when I came to Colorado, I didn't feel the same connection with the Catholic churches here. Mm-hmm. Just didn't. And I can only imagine that my connection back home was that I was used to it. Mm-hmm. Right? My people were there. But when I came here and my people weren't there, church was different for me. And so I had talked to Aida about that, and she invited me to her church, which is Faith Fort Collins. And this very first time I went with her, I knew that that's where I was supposed to be, that I was now, and now it's, I started there in 2003, so it's been a significant amount of time. Now I'm fed. Now I have a real relationship with the Lord. And because of that, and because of what she did, we have stayed friends. We are close. She has been a spiritual guide for me. But then she also introduced me to the Lions Club. And she took me, I had no idea why I was going to a Lions meeting, but she invited me and she was special to me. So I went and I walked into this room, the Fort Collins Lions, and just saw a sea of gray and thought, what in the world am I doing here?
Mhm.
Well, all of these years later, I am still a member. I've been the president. My daughter is the president currently of that same club. And it was the Lions that supported me in starting the Ensight Skills Center. They gave me the original funding to get started and have continued to support our project. Each year they continue. And because of the Lions across the state and internationally, we have recognition because everywhere that we go, we're a lion. We can go to a meeting, we can talk to people, we go to big conferences. And so Aida was the person who got me into all of those things, that got the ball rolling on all of that. And then, my husband is such a big influence on my life. His spirituality. I hadn't, even with my first husband, there was no real connection. There was no spiritual connection. He didn't go to church with us or with the kids. And Dan is so different, that his world has meaning because of his faith. And he inspires me, and he reminds me, and he prays for me, and he is a cheerleader for me. And I'm so fortunate that these people have all come into my life at the right time. And as I said, I look back and I can see every twist and turn and how God's plan came to be. And yes, like everybody, I had free will. So sometimes I made the wrong choices. I made the wrong turn. But he certainly has a way of getting us back on track.
Mhm.
And it's these people that I've just talked about that were the ones who got me on track, who kept me on track. Yeah, those are the people who have changed my life.
I can understand that. What I hear you saying is that you had many compassionate, supportive listeners and life guides along your way. And that's what role models are for all of us. Role models and mentors in our life, which is a gift for each of us.
Such a gift. Such a gift.
Thank you. So our next question is, do you have a favorite inspirational quote you'd like to share with our listeners?
I don't know if this is an inspirational quote or where I got it from. This is not an original, but often, so every year, some of the universities and some of the like Ames Community College and Front Range Community College, they bring over groups of young students who are trying to figure out what they want to do with their lives. And I give them a tour and I talk about what we do, an occupational therapy role in what we do. And every single time I say to them that you are only limited by your own imagination. And I really believe that. I brought my daughters up believing that you can do anything, that if there are obstacles in your life, they're in your head. That if you can imagine doing something, if you believe it, do it. I don't know if it's an inspirational quote or, again, where it came from, but I believe it with all my heart that, we can be our own worst enemies, and our fear can hold us down like nobody's business. And that if we can believe, if we can imagine it, it can happen.
I think that's a wonderful inspirational quote for all individuals to consider. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you for giving all of those young adults tours and sharing about your part in the healthcare profession and what, opening up possibilities for them. That's wonderful. So thank you for that. So in busy lives as women, and in your busy lives and working full time, how do you make time for yourself with your busy schedule? And why do you feel it's important to make time for yourself?
Well, to answer the last part first, balance. I am a big believer in balance. our lives, if we don't have balance in our lives, then something's going to go wrong. We can't be all of one thing and neglect the rest of our life. I really believe to be healthy in all the things that we do, there has to be balance. The reason that when I was trying to decide what to do, what to go back to school for, one of the reasons that I chose occupational therapy was because the philosophy of occupational therapy was to stay active, was to keep people moving. And since I was a teenager, I swam in high school and, did the whole lifeguarding thing. And I always knew that for me, exercise was important. It was important for my brain because when I swim, I can focus. Ideas come to me. God speaks to me. It's when I pray. And that's always been true. And so finding time to be able to do that has always been important to me. As I got older, I worked in gyms, Chicago health clubs, things like that, did personal training. And I saw how important exercise was to a person's well-being, as far as so many things go, their social lives, how they felt about themselves, their ability to succeed in their businesses. It was a way to get rid of stress. And so I always loved exercise. And since I was a teenager, there's never been a point in my life where I didn't exercise. And my daughters have picked up on that as well. In fact, my oldest daughter is a marathon runner. But it has always been important for me that I don't spend all of my time working or even thinking about work, that it was important for me to be able to get time to swim or to run or to cycle or to do those kinds of things, because that was going to make a difference in how I was with my children, how I was in school or in my job. But then there had to be time for the kids too. So I had to find a way to incorporate some of those things, like going for bike rides with the kids, or I would run and they would pedal alongside, or they would be in the car seat or the bike seat behind me. We would go for bike rides with the family. And as we got older, we spent more and more time doing that. And there was a period of time where I would run with my daughters, but they are so much better at those things than I am. I'm fortunate that we have a trainer pool at my house so that I can get in the pool and swim. And I have a little gym where I can cycle and do those things so that I don't have to worry about going to a gym. I have everything I need right here, and I can take the time to do those. And it's about balance. It's about finding that right balance in your life, because something is going to suffer if you can't find time for the things that are important to you.
Yes, I agree. But it is a challenge that we have to learn along the way as we go through our aging process.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. And as we get older, it gets a little more difficult,
Yes.
Maybe I'll just sit here and watch a TV show, or I'll sit outside and look at my iPad, but those things matter too, spending time with my neighbors and with my friends, and realizing that my business wasn't going to get any stronger or any better by me neglecting other parts of my life. That I was going to be better at my job if I found time for these other things. So it's not always easy, but I believe in it. So I make it happen.
Yes. And it's a necessity. That's the bottom line. It is a necessity for everyone, especially women and girls, to figure this out as they grow up. And so thank you for that. And so my last question for you is, what advice would you give to a young woman growing up today?
Well, I would tell them that anything is possible. That if there is something in their heart, something that they're passionate about, that they should go for it. They should figure out a way to make it happen. Find the right people that will support them in that. You know, as I said in the beginning, I had such great support around me. When I wanted to start Insight, I knew about low vision. You know, I knew about therapy, but I had no business background. And so I made sure that on my initial board of directors, I had an accountant and I had an attorney and I had a doctor and I had people who knew things. I had a couple of engineers, people who could help me. So I would say surround yourself with those people that can help you. And I don't mean it in a negative way, like using people. I mean, surround yourself with people who have similar passions and maybe have a skill that you don't possess. I continue to do that. I have advisory committees, and when I don't have an answer, when things are going around and around in my head, having people to share that with and having people that can give you really good advice based on their experience and their skills. I think that's important. So if there's something that you love, I say surround yourself with the people who can make that happen and go for it.
That's great advice for young girls today as they're trying to figure out what their path in life might be. They have to experience different things in life. And through that experience, as you've shared, comes your passion that you want to continue with throughout life.
Right.
So thank you so much for your time today and sharing your life experiences with us. We are honored to recognize your contributions to our community in this Living Her Legacy project. Here's a little recap of Denny's legacy. Denny, as a single mom and a vision impaired individual herself, began the nonprofit Ensight Skills Center for the vision impaired and the only nationally accredited one in Colorado. She is making a difference with her commitment, her courage, her resilience, and her service to others. As you heard her say, 90,000 strong and moving into their 20th year, which is so very exciting. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I'll give you a little overview of our project as we close today. Our Historic Public Art Education Project will recognize 48 notable women with ties to our Fort Collins community. When in Old Town, stop by the north side of Cooper Smith's Poolside Brewery to see our initial installation for our project. Our marquee information window put up August 30th of this year in 2020 to inform our community about what is coming to Old Town. To learn more about this historic art education project and each of our legacy honorees, visit our website at www.livingherlegacy.org. And I'm sorry, I have to be able to see my screen to move up my script as it sits behind my laptop. Join our movement to inspire girls' futures as they learn of these incredible women's life journeys. To learn about our education projects, we invite you to visit www.herlegacyfcdonate.org. Email us with any questions or if you'd like to join our movement so you don't miss any of our events or programs, email us at livingherlegacyinfo@gmail.com. Thank you all for joining us today, and a special thanks to you, Denny, for sharing your life journey with all of us today.
Well, thank you, Patty, for the honor and for the time that you've given me and for what you do for the women and the girls of Fort Collins. It's amazing. Your mission is amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. Have a nice day, everybody.
Bye.
Goodbye now.